Hi, it's Shannon back from houseimprovements.com. Today I want to show you how to remove this non-load bearing wall. So we've done some other videos already. You probably recognize this wall in this room from some other ones you've watched of ours. We've taken off the drywall, we've exposed the bare framing. We've also exposed what electrical was in the wall. Right now it's worth saying that all this is actually disconnected. There's some junction boxes in the ceiling. It's all been traced and actually disconnected, so there's no electrical current in there at all. We also, when we got this stripped down, we had a little bit of a surprise. If you come over here, we found that there's actually a beam up here tied into our non-load bearing wall. So threw me for a bit of a loop for a little bit, and then once I looked a little closer at it and investigated, I could see that, for one thing, by the way that it's nailed, it's really not a beam. It's not nailed properly if they were trying to make a beam. There should be 5 nails in each row, approximately 16 inches apart. So it's more or less tacked together than nailed together like a beam. You can also see there's a fair gap up here above between the top plate and the beam all the way along. There's some space here. There doesn't appear to be any pressure at all down on that. So it's purely decoration. They instead of cutting a bunch of little studs and making a little mini bulkhead across there, I think all they did was decide to use these 2x10s and put that across. So if you run into that type of situation, and you're not sure, you can have an engineer come in. You can have a professional contractor come in who's more familiar, and they can evaluate the situation if you come across something like that just to make sure that it isn't load bearing. We have determined that it isn't, so we're going to proceed with removing this wall and that beam. One of the first things, like I already mentioned, you want to be careful with is the electrical. So with that being said, one thing to consider also with the electrical is you don't want to just disconnect it, cut it off short and walk away sort of thing. If you're not going to be able to reuse it, or it's not linking into some other electrical device, actually remove the wiring completely, trace it back, go up, in this case in the attic, we'll trace it back to these junction boxes that are in the ceiling in the old kitchen that you can see here, and remove them completely. For one thing, it just reassures you that there isn't anything else hooked to them if you can actually trace that line right back to its origin. And it also doesn't leave some surprises laying up in there for the next person doing a renovation, and they come across an end of a cut wire and they don't know whether it's live or where it's going or what, right? So get rid of it completely if it's not going to be reused or needed. In our case, what I'm basically going to do is these ones over here are going to be completely pulled out when we're done, so I can go ahead and cut these right off, and I'm still leaving a couple feet here to deal with just so I can easily find it when it comes time to remove them completely. So I'm just taking side cutters, cutting these off to get them basically out of the way more. So those are the only ones that go up through the ceiling. This one has a staple in it up here. Just pull the staple out so that doesn't get caught up on anything. So then this is all free and clear. We've got nothing. Sometimes you'll have a wire maybe leaving this box going down through the floor and continuing on somewhere. In this case there wasn't anything, so this stuff is all independent right now. I'll just pull these couple staples out of here. Actually, somebody did a renovation here at some point in the years, and I'll just pull this wire around to the front here. They did a big no-no. They basically, all they had was this wire. They tapped into an electrical plug-in. This used to go up to a range hood on the other side of the wall here. They just had this wire between the drywall and the framing right there. It wasn't drilled through. It wasn't covered with a metal plate, nothing. Very, very dangerous. Anybody could have punctured that with a screw or a nail. And hurt themselves or started a fire or anything. So once you've got your electrical all figured out and you've decided what you're eliminating and what goes where, just get it all out of the way, like I said. And there's a couple different ways now that you could remove this wall. You could bring in a big hammer and just start swinging away and just bash these all over till the nails break through the side of the wood and pull them off. Usually what I do, just for ease of handling the material, I'll just take my reciprocating saw and just cut through these studs, you know, around 3-4 feet, basically cut them in half, pry the two halves out, and then they're easier to get out of the way. So that's what I'm going to do for what you're going to see me do. So I'm going to put my safety glasses on. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start right over here at this wall, just cut right through it. Okay, so that's one. You can get a bit of binding sometimes, and by that I mean as you're cutting, you know, the wood's, you're flexing the wood and it's trying to close that cut behind you and it binds on the blade. So you have to have a good firm grip on the tool and just be conscious that that could happen. Okay, so you got the idea of that part. So I'll just go back to these ones that I have cut. So you can see now they're easy to get a hold of. If I just simply grab a hold, pull and pry a little bit, each one of those will come off. And the same with the lower one. You might be wondering why this down below here, the plate doesn't actually go to the floor, and that would be because there was a cold air register here coming through the floor and into the wall. So this was framed around that to create that area for the vent to be. Now as you're going, just be conscious of, if you look down here, you can see the nails sticking up. There's going to be all kinds of porcupines sticking up like that. You don't want to step on them. So be bending those out of the way as you go, as well as the materials that we've pried out of the way. I'm standing them off to the side, not just dropping them on the floor where I'm walking all over them and possibly getting a nail stuck in my foot out of them as well, or just simply tripping on them. You can see here the bottom plate came right out, right off the floor with this piece. Well, just about. Okay, so we're going to entirely remove this wall, so we're wanting to get right down to the floor. And we're going to be pulling the double top plate up here right off as well. And when we do that, it'll come down around these wires because there's a hole drilled through there, so that'll all come right off through there. So I'm just going to continue on, get the majority of this wall out of the way, and then we'll come back to getting that beam out of where it is. Okay, so you can see we've removed all the main stud work out of here. We bent over all the nails down on the floor for safety, and also up at the ceiling. We bent all the nails over, or as many as we could. So now we're down to this post that was in the corner. You can see I've actually already cut through it with the recip saw. You might be able to see that. So the post is really just sitting there. We also determined before we cut that beam, there's some nails down through the top plate there's a top plate right here that would be attached to the bottom of the trusses. It's nailed down from the top of that down into here, so that when I remove this, the beam should basically hang there for right now until we can cut it out of the way. So I'm just going to maneuver these pieces apart so we can get this post out of the way. So you can see how many nails are in there holding everything together. You definitely don't want to drop this on your foot or anything. Okay, so we got that out of there. I'll set that to the side. The bottom one should come out easy. I'll get rid of these nails down here. Okay, so I think you can see this is held up there. It's not even moving, so I'm not too worried about that right at this point. I think maybe what I'll do is remove the floor plate, or the bottom plate of the wall, sorry, off the floor. And then even though we've got the nails bent over, there's still a tripping hazard. They still could puncture your foot. So we'll get that out of the way since we really don't have any purpose for it being there anymore. So as long as you can get underneath it with a bar, they're generally just nailed down through the subfloor. So that's one. This one should come up just as easy. See the bottom of that plate just split at this end where it was kind of toe nailed down, so not a big deal. Just make sure you get the nails out. Okay, so we got those plates all pulled up, and I'm just going to get them cleaned up and out of the way before we pull the beam up. You'll probably notice this junction box down in here. This was just for the old range. It's disconnected and we just pushed it down out of the way for right now. It was attached in that wall, so. Anyways, I'll get some stuff out of the way here and then we're going to look at that beam. Okay, so we've got all that lumber out of the way. There's nothing to trip on, get hurt on. We're going to cut this beam free, and as I mentioned before, it's nailed down through this bottom plate from the top down into here. You can see it's wobbly, but it's held up by those nails. We've also, part way back there, we've cut the beam basically in half just to make it easier to handle. So we're going to show you how to get rid of it by getting rid of this one half, and then you'll see exactly what we had to do. So I've got the recip saw, and I've got a demolition blade in there, so it's good for wood and nails or whatever we're cutting through. So I'm just going to start by cutting. I can see there's two here, so I'll make a cut that way. I'll pull out, maybe move my stool and start going back that way, and my assistant will be holding up this end, so we should be good. You definitely want your safety glasses on for this. Okay, so I cut through, there sounded like there was 3 nails there. So I'm just going to get turned around here a little bit and start going down the rest of the length. Okay, so we got our first chunk of that beam out of there, and like I said, all I was doing was cutting these nails that were nailed. Actually, which way was it? This way. This was up. I was just cutting the nails off that were coming down through that plate. So there's really not too much left here to show you, but we got to pull off that double plate up there on the ceiling, and that'll wrap things up. We'll just leave the rest of this beam and pull it down at another time. Okay, so I'm just looking for a joint in that plate. I don't actually see one, so we'll just make a cut here first. I'm just going to cut through that the very top plate right in this location, just to make it easier to get down, because it's still above the beam down at that end. I think I got it there. So again, you just want to make sure your space is clear as you're prying this down, just in case it lets go and drops to the floor. And it'll just be nailed to the bottom of the trusses up there. I got to get around this way. This takes a little bit till you can get it started. It's coming. This one's being really tight, so I've got it exposed enough there. I think I can cut the first two nails off. We may have to do that a couple times just to get it to come loose. I'm just looking for where the next rafter is. It's over here. Should be 2 feet away. This area. It really wants to be stubborn. I think part of the problem is our plate's binding there where I cut it. It's not helping anything, that's for sure. Starting to come now. Oops. So as you can see, this is going to end up being the toughest part of the whole thing. Part of the problem is you can't just pry up there and against the drywall anywhere. You're just going to put a hole through the ceiling. You need to be where there's a truss. I'm just having trouble getting it to start there. Well, let's try taking the 2 layers apart. That'll give us a little more flexibility. Okay, so you can see those are starting to separate there now. See if I can maybe just pull it down now. Okay, so we got that first one down. I'm just going to get rid of these nails. We'll see if we can get this top one off now. It's definitely being stubborn. I got a little more space here now. There we go. Okay, and then you can see we have that one electrical wire sticking down. So we got to be a little conscious of that, even though we know it's dead. I'm just kind of working my way along. I don't know if you can see that space there. I've kind of created some room in order to get the pry bar in. I'm just looking for where that other truss is. It should be somewhere in here. I'll see, I may be able just to pull on this end now. Pull it down like I did the first one. Well, that's one way. Okay, so we basically, you've got the idea now. There's no point in watching me struggle to get that last little piece down. You can see that the space up here, you can actually see the insulation in the attic because all the walls would have been framed obviously before it was drywalled. So now all these little strips in the ceiling will just have to be patched in with drywall and fixed all up. So that's not a big deal. That's another video. So we got that all down. I think you have a pretty good idea now how you need to do that. It takes a fair bit of work. You're going to have a big pile of rubble left when you're done to haul away. I guess the biggest safety thing is wearing your safety glasses and watching out for those nails because they're, as you can see, sticking out of everything. So hopefully that helped you do what you had to do, and you can watch all our other videos. We've got lots of videos on YouTube. We've got the website at houseimprovements.com, and as well on the website there's a forum where you could come and ask more questions if you have a project going on, you're just not sure which way to turn next or how to finish up. So just post your questions there, somebody will help you out, and please keep watching.